This particular specimen which you can see here, this is called as a composite viscera. Why this is called as a composite viscera? Not because of one structure is present inside the other or one viscera is present inside the other. Not like that. Because three visceras present here are present in continuity. You can see this particular big structure which is present here, the dorsal surface. This is the tongue. This particular specimen is the tongue. Below, if I close it like this, you see it is closed like this. In normal structure in our body, it is closed like this. This region is called, this specimen inside, this is called as the pharynx. This entire thing is called as the pharynx. What we have done is we have cut open from the posterior aspect and we have opened it up. So you can see now that the pharyngeal muscles are cut, and what you can see inside, this is the region of the pharynx. Pharynx is divided into three parts: the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. These two regions of, this is the region of oropharynx where my thumb is, and this is the region of the laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx is not visible in this specimen. Okay? So these two parts of the pharynx are visible. When I have cut the posterior aspect like this longitudinally, the muscles of the pharynx are cut open and you can see the inside of the pharynx. On the inside, here you can see like this is present another structure which you are seeing from the posterior aspect. This is called as the larynx. Now larynx, the voice box, is made up of laryngeal cartilages mainly and muscles. Now here also what we have done, the posterior aspect of the larynx we have cut open, so that now you are seeing the inside of the larynx. First of all, let us start with the tongue. This is the tongue. Now when I am placing it like this, here you can see this is the tip of the tongue. This is the ventral aspect of the tongue. This is the dorsal aspect of the tongue. And here, this particular portion which is present between my thumb and index finger is the root of the tongue. Tongue is a viscera which is having striated muscles present inside it. It is under your control. It is supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, which brings about the movement of the tongue. So inside the muscles of the tongue, that is taught to you theoretically, and in the last viscera which we have taught you, that is the region of the submandibular region, there we have shown you some muscles of the tongue, namely the hyoglossus and the styloglossus. There is no need to go inside, cut the tongue and see the intrinsic and the extrinsic muscles present inside. Let us see the tongue along its dorsal surface. So this surface which is visible now is the dorsal surface of the tongue. The dorsal surface of the tongue is divided into two parts by a V-shaped, follow the forceps, a V-shaped line called as sulcus terminalis. Sulcus terminalis here which is present is dividing the tongue into two parts, the dorsum of the tongue. This part is called as the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and this part on the back side here, this is called as the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. This is the dorsal surface of the tongue. You can feel the dorsal surface of the tongue, the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. It is totally rough. This roughness is because of the presence of the filiform papillae. Filiform papillae, as it is taught in histology, does not contain any taste bud, but the filiform papillae is present to give roughness to the tongue, so that the food bolus is prepared here between the hard palate and the dorsal surface of the tongue. This surface contains your taste buds present in the foliate and the fungiform, and the taste buds present here. Now when I am pointing the forceps here, see one present here, see the other one present here, another one present here, another one present here. These are the circumvallate papillae. These are the circumvallate papillae which are present anterior to the V-shaped sulcus terminalis, and here you can see this is the region which I have taught you while teaching you the thyroid gland. This is the foramen cecum. This is the foramen cecum. Through this foramen goes down the endodermal diverticulum called as the thyroglossal duct, which gives rise to the thyroid gland. So this is the line dividing the tongue into anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. The anterior two-third, as I have said, it is a rough surface containing maximum amount of filiform papillae, and just in front of the V is present like this the foramen cecum. At the apex, of the V is present the foramen cecum, from where the thyroglossal duct emerges to give rise to the thyroid gland. Now, if we go behind, and before we go behind this line, let us talk about this anterior two-third of the tongue. Two important things. One is their development, one is their nerve supply. This part of the tongue, that is the anterior two-third of the tongue, I am talking about the development of the lining epithelium, not the muscles. Please remember this one line regarding the development of the muscles of the tongue. All muscles of the tongue develop from occipital myotomes. Then these myotomes migrate from the region of the occipital region all the way front to settle down along the floor of the developing pharynx. That is the ventral aspect of the branchial apparatus, and they will form the muscles of the tongue. Whereas this lining epithelium of the anterior two-third develops from three swellings, two anteriorly called as the lingual swelling and one posterior and in the midline called as tuberculum impar. These three swellings will join with each other. These swellings are swellings present in the first branchial arch. So this anterior two-third of the tongue develops from the first branchial arch. Can you see the difference between this anterior two-third and posterior one-third of the tongue? The posterior one-third of the tongue contains these swellings. Can you see these swellings which are present? These swellings, this particular region does not contain any papilla. This particular region has got these swellings because of the presence of the mucosal lymphoid tissue. And this aggregation of mucoid lymphoid tissue, mucous lymphoid tissue, this gives rise to the lingual tonsil. So all these elevations together, they are combinedly called as the lingual tonsil. Okay, so the posterior one-third of the tongue is specifically the region which is derived from the third branchial arch, and this region develops from, remember one term, hypobranchial eminence. उस hypobranchial eminence का cranial part will give rise to the posterior one-third of the tongue, और उसका caudal part will give rise to this structure. Can you all see the structure? This is called as epiglottis. So यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक, this is called as hypobranchial eminence. This develops from hypobranchial eminence, whose cranial part will give rise to the posterior one-third of the tongue, and whose caudal part gives rise to the epiglottis. So if you are asked in viva, epiglottis develops from, your answer will be caudal part of the hypobranchial eminence. If the question is asked, posterior one-third of the tongue develops from, your answer will be cranial part of hypobranchial eminence. So coming to the first part, that is development. So anterior two-third of the tongue develops from the two lingual swellings and tubercular impar. Posterior one-third of the tongue develops from the cranial part of the hypobranchial eminence. This is third arch. This is first arch. Second arch gets submerged by the overlapping of first and third arch. Second arch ta machkhane dhuke jaye. Okay. Anyway, now the second point regarding this is the nerve supply. Anterior two-third of the tongue, general sensation, tumi jodi tomar jeep take touch karo, general sensation from the tongue goes via the lingual nerve, which is a branch of the mandibular nerve, which is a branch of the trigeminal nerve. The taste sensation from the taste buds present here travel via the cauda tympani nerve, which is a branch of the facial nerve. Facial nerve is a nerve of the second branchial arch. Eta hoye gelo special sensation and general sensation of the anterior two-third of the tongue. The posterior one-third of the tongue and these circumvallate papillae, please remember, the circumvallate papillae and the posterior one-third of the tongue is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve, which is a nerve of the third branchial arch. Both the general sensation as well as taste sensation, please remember, both the general sensation as well as the taste sensation, that is called gustatory sensation, from the posterior one-third of the tongue travel via the glossopharyngeal nerve. Our anterior two-third of the tongue, it travels via cauda tympani nerve. All these gustatory fibers are going to go and end in the nucleus tractus solitarius present in the medulla of the brainstem, extending into the pons, from where the second order fibers will travel from the nucleus tractus solitarius to the thalamus. They are called as solitarothalamic tract, and from the thalamus it will go to the cerebral cortex, where you have the area demarcated for your taste sensation along the cerebral cortex. So this is the pathway of taste sensation. So anterior 2/3 of the tongue, posterior 1/3 of the tongue, and this particular region where I am keeping my thumb, এই জায়গাটাকে বলা হয় root. The posterior most part of the tongue here, this region is supplied by the internal laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of the superior laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of the vagus nerve. তাহলে একদম root, this region is supplied by the 10th cranial nerve. 10th cranial nerve এর মধ্যে fibers আছে of cranial accessory. That details we will go later on when we will discuss in neuroanatomy. लेकिन এখন তুমি মনে রাখো, this area where I am putting my thumb or I am pointing with the forceps, this is the root. The root is supplied by internal laryngeal nerve. So anterior 2/3, posterior 1/3, and the root of the tongue, and this is their nerve supply. A question comes, describe the development of the tongue along with its nerve supply. The development of anterior 2/3 of the tongue is different. It is deriving from the first branchial arch, so its nerve supply is from the first branchial arch. Taste fibers are supplied by a branch of facial nerve, second arch, and that is the cauda tympani nerve. The development of the posterior 1/3 of the tongue is different. It is from the hyperbranchial eminence, and hence it is supplied by the nerve of the third arch, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve. So after the tongue, let me go to one small region which is present, that is the region of the pharynx actually. Now when I am this structure, what I have said, what is this structure? This is the epiglottis. Epiglottis, when I am pulling it backwards like this, can you see the presence of a fold in the center which is helping to hold the epiglottis or connect the epiglottis with the tongue? This fold which is present in the center, this fold is called as the median glossoepiglottic fold. This is called as the median glossoepiglottic fold. It is a mucosal fold connecting your epiglottis with the root of the tongue. Then on the two sides which I am holding with the forceps, this one and this one, there are other similar to this, there are other two folds present laterally. These two are called as the lateral glossoepiglottic fold. Let me hold with another forceps and show it to you. This is lateral. Can you all see? Lateral glossoepiglottic fold, lateral glossoepiglottic fold, median glossoepiglottic fold. The area which is present between these folds, so these two areas are called as valleculae. These areas are called as valleculae. The area present between the median glossoepiglottic fold and the lateral glossoepiglottic fold, these depressions on both the sides along the root of the tongue, this is called as valleculae. And this area is also supplied by internal laryngeal nerve. Actually this entire region here on both sides, this entire region is supplied by the internal laryngeal nerve. How the internal laryngeal nerve enters this region? তোমার যদি মনে থাকে, in the deep dissection of the neck here, আমি যদি এই viscera-টাকে একটু টার্ন করি, এখানে ডিসেকশনটা করা নেই। আচ্ছা, বাই দ্য ওয়ে, দিস ইজ দ্য থাইরয়েড কার্টিলেজ। इसके ऊपर तुमको यहाँ मिलेगा हायोइड बोन, and here you will have two membranes called as thyrohyoid membrane, which will be covered by thyrohyoid muscles. So this thyrohyoid membrane is pierced by the superior laryngeal artery and the internal laryngeal nerve. So the artery, the nerve pierces like this, and it enters inside to supply this particular region. Okay, so this is about the tongue and about the valleculae and the epiglottis and these two folds.